So John, we were chatting for a little bit, but for people that are watching, listening to this, you joined. I'm trying to think actually when we first connected, but in terms of the current program that you are in, you launched that launched in September. It's currently December 18th. So we're a bit over the 3 month mark here as we're having this conversation, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but you went from uh, zero outbound clients. You'd always kind of gotten referrals in the past, and you wound up maxing out, hitting capacity. I think you actually told me you went over capacity, and now we're looking at a new conversation. So we'll kind of fill in all the details here, and I'll
Yeah.
kind of ask some questions about that. But I wonder before we jump in, if you can just kind of introduce yourself and kind of who you are, what you're doing, what you're coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is John, and I have pivoted a little bit on my coaching. So, previously, I've been coaching for about 4 years, and I did a lot of mostly healthcare executive leadership coaching. So, working with new leaders there on kind of fundamental leadership type stuff, and then also executives I've worked a lot with on culture type things, and especially culture towards provider groups and how you can kind of support provider groups and things along those lines. And then when I met you was definitely a period of time too that I felt like I like working with this group, but I don't like only working with this group. It's time to transition. And so this program was a good opportunity to really start auditing like my audience and who do I want to work with and what type of offer do I want to have. And like you said, I also had no outbound. I mean, like it was all inbound. For 4 years, it was all inbound. I had a good network and lots of referrals from that network, and then word of mouth from people I worked with and things like that. And so that part was good, but I couldn't have told you how to find a client or anything like that. And so then started going through the program, started shifting a little bit, and now I still work with healthcare executives. I still like that world. I still work in the healthcare side on my 9 to 5, but I've diversified a little bit more to, I don't know if you want to call it like performance-based coaching, but I'm a dad who works multiple jobs, has a wife, all of that, and so I wanted to um, help others kind of go through what navigate what I've gone through as far as you feel stretched. Um, and you start chasing goals quite a bit. So I climbed in my career really quickly and ran up that ladder as fast as possible, and kind of lost sight of a lot of meaning, purpose, those types of things. So it was how can I help others where you have a busy life, you feel stretched, but how do you stay grounded through that? How do you navigate that without burning out? Because that's what we're seeing, right? Is people just burning out everywhere instead of feeling like what they're doing matters. And so that's been kind of the shift, and that's where my offer started to go towards. And yeah, I've ended up finding a couple clients now throughout. Yeah, like you said, I actually went over. So typically I work with five. I'm working with six for the simple fact that I'm bad at math and didn't realize I had five already. I thought I was at four, and so that part's been fun. It's been really interesting, and to be honest, I probably could have gone over. I slowed down so much once I hit that number, just for the simple fact of I don't have any more space.
Yeah, so let's unpack a couple of those things because I think it's useful for people to hear like how you think about this and kind of pull back the curtain on like what growing your business or what a coaching practice really looks like. So you've been coaching for years, like you have the skill set. You've always gotten referrals and inbound, and I understand that can be really up and down, and like you don't always have control over that word of mouth. But can you kind of paint a picture for like you talked about it sort of high level, but I'm wondering like if we get into the specifics, like what was your so from like a business perspective, like what was your revenue at like month to month for just the coaching business, and then like where were you at like personally, like where was your head at, and what was your sort of your feeling, I guess, when you're starting to think about this transition and making some changes.
Yeah, so revenue was this one's always, I'll give you like the average revenue because
Yeah.
for the well, one, yeah, it fluctuates a little bit. But the other one was for the longest time, I don't think I really acknowledged what I was doing. And I started out as a coach from actually my executive coach. I kind of finished working and then he started referring people. He asked if I would ever be interested in doing it. I helped do a couple, facilitate a couple groups with him. And then he started referring some clients over to me. And I didn't really think about, oh, I can make money off of this. So there was some like periods of time where I wasn't making any money and then was kind of dramatically undercharging. But I'd say on average before hitting this, starting this program, it was probably between $3,000 to $4,000 a month. And with that, on the, on the revenue side, I think one side that made that not fluctuate as much as that I was doing long-term engagements with organizations, so they were just paying consistently, and that part was very small. I mean, I kept my amount of coaching time I'd spend at 5 hours, so at 5 hours, which obviously 5 hours direct client isn't 5 hours of work, but at 5 hours of direct client, it would be, typically I range between 4 and 5 clients, and it was about $1,000 a month per client.
So some people like and myself included, like when I was first starting my business, I feel like I would hear that and I'd like my business number one, like when I was starting from scratch, I might hear that and think like, hey, that's not that's not so bad. That's not a bad place to be in. But then other people might hear that and kind of, you know, what's the word? Sneeze at it. And I guess I'm what like there's a whole spectrum, but I'm curious like if where you were on the spectrum and like what that actually felt like as well for you, and like why you were starting to think about. Some people might look at that as good or bad, but what did it look like for you? And when you started thinking about making some changes and taking a look at the program?
Yeah, I felt neutral from the revenue side of things, like it was fine. It was like I said, it was kind of that side hustle side. I'm lucky and blessed to have a great day job. And so the revenue side, I didn't feel a lot of pressure there by any means. That's not something, you definitely see online like I made $3,000 a month. Now I'm gonna quit my 9 to 5 and go all in. And that wasn't where I was at. I have a kid, I have multiple kids and family and all of that. So $3,000 a month after taxes and all that stuff's not doing a
Yeah.
lot. So but I felt fine there. What it came down to was, what do I want out of my career? If you would have asked me probably pre-pandemic, I would have told you, oh, I'm gonna become a CEO. Like that's the route I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna really focus on that. And then I went through my own version of burnout and working too much and all of that stuff. And there really is a point where like you're making enough money that you feel comfortable, and no amount of money after that's going to be worth it, where you feel like you're kind of losing your mind and losing yourself and all of that. And so that's where this program definitely kicked in of, is this something I want to do full time? And if it is, then I need to figure out, how do you find outbound clients? How do you keep more of a revenue stream going?
Yeah, I think a lot of people like it's easy to measure the revenue side of things, and that's one of the many reasons that we talk about it. But it sounds like if I'm hearing you right, it was really wasn't we were really talking more about the impact, both on like your clients, like how do we craft, like how to create an offer, like put something together that we can like put in front of them and make a difference, but also like that fits your lifestyle, because that's really what
Mhm.
you're talking about. So did like had you um when you first like decided to book a call and actually like join this particular program, um I know you, and happy for you to share that you had a little bit of a different path probably than most. But in terms of like the decision making process to actually invest, like your time and resources into this, I'm curious, like what was that? What did that look like for you? What made you decide to actually like commit and join?
Yeah. Yeah, that's That's a great question. And it's one that I believe I mean I shared I haven't had an executive coach before that helped me in kind of my career, and that definitely accelerated that. And it's the same with this of like, if it's something you're interested in, coaching's an interesting thing because it's definitely not a necessity by any means. I think most people can figure it out. It's more of the time. Like if you want to accelerate your timeline, it makes more sense to find someone who's done it before and can kind of help you versus kind of scratching through, because that's what you'd be doing. You'd be piecemealing and trying to figure things out. And if you're lucky enough to have a network of people that can at least point you in the right direction, then maybe you'd go a little bit faster. But I think there's that part of it of like, can most people, including myself, figure something out on their own? Yes, I believe that. But will it take exponentially longer? Will you probably have more failures along the way? Yeah, for both of those two. So that was a part of it. And then the other part is um, it's a group of people. And having a group of people, I mean, I've been through the one-to-one in the leadership stuff that I did. I was in a one-to-one and I was in a cohort. And the one-to-one was really great and really helpful, but that cohort, when you are learning some things that maybe have even increased discomfort, but you have people that have similar goals and kind of are at the same level, um, it one can feel less lonely. Yeah, there's a little less self-judgment, things like that that can happen for sure. But then the other part's just that it accelerates learning for everybody because everyone's kind of having these aha moments. They're sharing things, and you're like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about that, but that makes a lot of sense. I should try that. And so you can build off other people's momentum too, not just your own.
Yeah, I mean, accelerating the timeline sounds like first and foremost, but then all those layers, because like you've had one-to-one coaching with me, you've had the group experience, there's the roadmap, laying out the steps in the in the classroom. So there's all those different layers that seem to add to that first point, like accelerating the timeline. And I tell people this all the time. I show a lot of times I'll show like your Riley was right, but don't tell him post inside the program because I know you like to bust my balls, but it's but it's that post that like I think is a perfect example of what you're talking about, where you were sharing an aha moment, where you trusted the process, you leaned in, and then that was I think that post was when you got your first client through this process. Like it wasn't just a referral, you went out and got your own and like created it, and that must feel like empowering too. Like, but anyway, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm curious, like, so if we fast forward a bit, like in the program, like during, because I mean, you're still in it now, but like that was the first like real big aha moment, and I think that was like a few weeks in, like 3 weeks into to the launch. But is
Yeah,
that
it was probably about 3 weeks. Yeah, it was pretty quick because I did a bunch of market research calls and then started kind of figuring out what my process would be for what we talked about with the appetizer of kind of like what's the next step after the market research. And it was when I first started trying that one out, it was literally the first person I did it with, that it worked. And yeah, it was super empower. I mean, there's definitely a couple things. One, like volume's important. It takes time, but like the comfort level of that, it was super funny from like market research call number one, where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know, let's hope we can have a conversation type thing. To that one, which led to the appetizer, which then was this very natural thing. So volume is important just from a comfort level. Like you're going to figure out like what resonates with people quickly, but also you're learning that market a little bit more. So, and it evolves as you have this idea in your head of, yes, here's my ideal client type. Here's who I'm going to work with. And this is what they really need. And I know they need it, to all of a sudden like, oh, they're saying things that are close, but they're different. So let's start morphing that a little bit. And that was invaluable. And then, like you said, I think it is empowering to realize like, I can help people and they see value in that just through a conversation.
yeah, it's this weird like blend of like humility, like bring yourself down a bit, but then also confidence because you're building yourself up at the same
Yeah.
time. That's at least what I'm hearing. But yeah, you said a lot of things, but and maybe you've already said it, but I'm curious, like what has been the most valuable part of being in this program for you so far?
I think one is structure. And when we talk about like acceleration of timelines and things like that, one thing is structure, right? Like when you're working with a group of people or someone like yourself who has done it before, there's a pretty nice, of course, nothing's perfectly linear, but a much more linear process of kind of here's how you get there. Where when you're trying to figure things out, it looks more like a roller coaster. You're going a lot of different directions and the focus can be different. So, and shiny object syndrome's real. And so that part for sure, I think is really helpful to kind of guide where you need to go and where your focus should be. So that was really valuable. And then I think the other one was when you can break down and kind of go through some of these steps, you do start getting confidence. I mean, when we talked about that first client, like I literally closed the client without an actual offer. And it was because of like I'd done enough market research calls that I was confident in what needed to be like what I needed to be able to deliver on that could make an impact. That person, after that conversation, it made sense. We went into a core values conversation where they were very invested. They looked like an ideal client. That then I just went ahead and made the offer of in my head what I already knew was going to be my offer, but I had not like formalized that in any way.
Man, isn't that so like nuts almost to think like because that might not be the my recommendation
No.
is to go in under, but it just goes to show that like you just follow this process and you got to a point where you were so like you just leaned into it and you were so in tune with your clientele, who you were like, who your audience was, who you were trying to serve, that like you just knew what to say. Like you didn't even have to. I don't think you'd even gotten to any of the rest of like. There's more program that talks through all those
Yeah.
steps,
Yeah.
and like you hadn't even. I don't know if you'd even gotten to that point yet.
I hadn't even gotten to the offer yet. I'd literally
Yeah,
gotten through like I think just the market research section. And then the appetizer side. So like right
the
after that, what
beginning.
was that?
Yeah,
So like I was right there. And yeah, I mean it's like and it goes back to I think it is in the beginning it's a volume game. And also that's another thing that without like a group like this or something, I think a lot of people discount because right, we have the microwave society of like I had one conversation with one person and now let's universalize that because I want to get speed here. And it's like you can still have speed, but you probably should slow down enough to know what you're really working with and what the need is. Because without that, for sure, like if that would have been my first market research call, there's no way I would have accelerated into an offer without having a formalized offer out. But that was like my maybe 40th call,
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, perspectives. Yeah, people don't realize because I hear this quite often before joining like what volume actually means or looks like. And the truth is it's quite often specific to you and your niche as well. Um, so there's a lot of nuance there. So but just for time's sake, we'll go through because we could get lost in the weeds talking about that. But it sounds like you navigated that expertly. Like I want to give credit to, where it's due. Like you put in the work, you put in the focus, you put in the time. And then like you said, like you could have kept going. So I'm kind of curious, like, because you have these boundaries in your own life, which is kind of cool to hear that like that sort of part of who you are in your niche anyway is like the boundaries and being able to say like no I value this I value so really it's like values alignment. So like I love how meta this is that like you're like, being an example of what you're offering as well. So I'm curious like if we talk about now like where you got to in the like well after that point, like if you can give people an update of like, so I think you said you're at 6 clients, and even though you wanted to cap it at 5, so that was a math error maybe, but like, what does that look like revenue wise, and then what does that look like for you? Like you started talking about it like impact, like, but like on the emotional, the human side of things as well, not just the business. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, so 6 clients, 3 of those, so it's half and half from an inbound outbound perspective, which is cool because I mean that was one thing that I really wanted to gain from this program is like, is this scalable? And I think obviously I have my own boundaries because I do other things and I value time with my family and stuff. But if I want to invest more time, then yes, I think it's absolutely scalable and that
you
taught
went
me
from
that.
100% inbound down to 50, you cut that in half.
Yeah.
this work that you've been doing.
Yep. And so, I mean, that was huge there. And then I think the other part is, and this is again maybe a bit of a volume thing, but even like my current offer now, we've had the conversation of like it continues to evolve as you continue to work with more people and get more full and all of that. And through the cool thing is through the program, there's other people that are experiencing similar things and all of that stuff. So you can bring it out there. I mean, we had that one call where I was like, what do you do with the wait list? And how do you manage that? And it's a great problem to have, but it is a problem, and it's a problem that can lead to like dissatisfaction and lost potential clients if you don't do it well. And
Yeah.
so that part's been kind of my new navigation. But I'd say from a revenue perspective, yeah, I think by the end of this month I will be at 7,000 a month. So that part is nice. Um, and has increased there for sure. And then I think the other part is, which is like intangible. It's not even aligned with this program, but it's from skills that you gain from this program. Um, you and I talked about this, is it's from doing a lot of calls and things like that. I've also had other opportunities come up in my life where I've been more comfortable with conversations of gaining more information, kind of looking at where's the fit for me there. So I mean, I've also landed a consulting client that's $5,000 a month since I've been in this program. So revenue's gone up, work's gone up, and the coolest thing though with all of it is, for me, is it's all meaningful work. It's all things that I feel like matter. It's all things that I feel like are helping people. I mean, I'm not selling people magical growth or anything like that. It's I can help you get to where you'd like to go, and I'm not guaranteeing outcomes by any means or anything like that, but I can tell you I've navigated it. I'm also a trained mental health professional, so I understand the psychology of things well too. And all of that's in complete alignment, which is what probably originally drew me to the program the most. Was like my life feels more in alignment than it used to, but it's still out of alignment a little bit. Can I look at taking a little bit more control to get more freedom?
Yeah, and I think it's like I love hearing how all the different opportunity, like it's almost becomes a cyclical thing because you, like what I'm hearing is you came in with the focus on just the coaching practice. It's like with the program, like that's what we were looking at. Just from that alone, like you 2x'd revenue, you got more focused, you started to be able to mix up acquisition channels, the skill sets, like there's a bunch of other like spinoffs, like besides just focusing on revenue, but you also had other opportunities open up, like even beyond that. And it almost like, and now, so maybe this kind of, we can segue into sort of like moving forward, next steps, because I think like you went through this process, created all these opportunities, took advantage of the ones that you wanted, and now you have more new opportunities, new doors have opened. And I hear that from other people in the program too. Like, um, well, Glenn, as you know, like he did very well with the program, and he literally pulled out a notebook of all all the different opportunities outside of just clients that have been coming up for him. And I know someone else in the program had a full-time job offer related to their new business as well. Like, there's just all these things that start to come out of the woodworks, which is crazy. But all that said, all that context, and for you, what are you thinking about for your next steps, as much as you're willing or able to share? Because I know there's quite a there's quite a few opportunities that you're looking at, but even if we look at it through the lens of like building your coaching and consulting practice and building that up as well, like you said, you had another 5K on top of that opportunities. So I'm curious, what's next for you? Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing now?
Yeah, so I think that's another thing that has been cool about the program and kind of following through is there is a lot of repetition, and action creates clarity a lot of times. And so, I came into the program kind of thinking, hey, can I scale this up to being more of a full-time gig where I can create a little bit more freedom, all of that type of stuff. Getting to the client base where I'm at now, I know that's not necessarily what I want to do. I mean, you and I talked about this. I really like the diversity of work that I do, where I have lots of irons in the fire, but they're all with different focuses, and that I like that. That's something that I enjoy. So I think I will maintain that. But I think from the coaching perspective, it's now looking at also how do I diversify my offers to get to more people. So we've talked about like, do you do some group cohort type work and things like that? So I'm actually re-going through the program now again, now with the new problem of you know, I'm doing pretty good and I feel comfortable with the one-to-one side of things, but I'm going to keep my one-to-one really small. As you know, I scaled back some of my other stuff I was doing to open up more hours, and then my consulting gig that I landed took those hours, so I hadn't scaled up again. So now it's if I can't scale up from I've created more time, how can I scale up from a volume perspective? And that's groups. So looking at some sort of group type program is what I'm re-going through all the information that we have in the program and figuring out. And then I think the other part is I've also, learned a lot of what I want and don't want from just the volume of it. And so there will continue to be an evolution towards what I'm doing and where my focus goes. I really enjoy consulting too, so I think that's fun. So I'll continue to tie those things up. And I mean, you and I talked about I like mine. I'm the maybe the rarity, but I like my 9 to 5. Sometimes the hour restriction and things like that maybe aren't the best of you have to do that. But also I've seen enough people that go all in on entrepreneurship that really create uh, uh, you know 24/7 model of work in the name of freedom, which is just incongruent. So
Yeah, it doesn't it's what's the word for that? It's not a catch 22, but yeah, it's a almost hypocritical. Like definitely
yeah,
doesn't make sense anymore, which is probably the favorite thing that I heard you say is that it sounds like you almost just create like we talked about values alignment. You said there's still some things that you could further align, but it's just the fact that like you have that freedom of choice. Like going through this process, like you've built up that leverage, you had the skill sets, and this just like added more length to that lever for you to crank, for you to be able to like to make those choices. And like as you evolve and as more opportunities come on, it makes sense to revisit the process because it's a lot of principles and the skill sets that we're talking, like foundational things we're talking about
yeah.
that
Well, the
you're able
program
to
talks
take
about
advantage of.
in the program talks about mindset first, right? And it is one of those things where it's interesting as you start going through it, because I think going into the program was like, I feel like I might need to make a shift. And so you are probably going more from a scarcity or like a fear-based mindset of like, I need to do this, I need to make this shift. And then as you get some reps under your belt and kind of feel like you have more of a proven system and there's confidence there and things like that, the abundance mindset's just there. I mean, I said, I'm not going to scale up my time or anything like that anytime soon. But I also now have the confidence to say, like, if I did, I could.
Hmm. That's that's a great anecdote. I love that as a takeaway. And maybe just conscious of time, like to wrap this up, because I know you and I could chat all day. What like if you were looking back to like before we even had our first conversation, if I just put this program in front of you or like the decision to book a call, um, and we like before we'd first met, I'm curious, like if you were to talk to that John or someone else who's in the same situation now, like they haven't heard of, this program or you or I before, or but they're thinking about, booking a call or they're on the fence about joining the program. Like, what would you say to that, your previous self or to that person in that, who's kind of hemming and hawing or like on the fence?
hmm Yeah, I would say if, looking back, I mean, I jumped in pretty quick, so I don't know if I'd change much of what I did. We had a conversation. It was like, yeah, let's do it. But I would definitely say from other people that I've talked to about this program and stuff with you, I'd say the same thing. I tell them is like, hey, if you're on the fence and you're thinking about this, I think you really need to think about one thing that's really important, and it's, are you willing to put in the work and the reps? If you're willing to set aside the time, this is a program that's going to help you quite a bit, but this is not a done for you program. You aren't magically going to have clients and be a great coach and have a great offer. Like, you have to actually go through and do the work. And it does require time. It's an investment of time in the upfront in particular. Like, now, I spend way less time now than I did a couple months ago because I'm not doing a ton of market research calls or any of that. But without doing that, I would have a lot more free time right now because I wouldn't have any clients. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you
Yeah.
have to do that upfront work, which got busy for a little bit. So I think one's like, are you actually willing and committed to set aside the time? If not, don't waste your money. And then the other part is, if the answer is yes to that part, are you willing to be open-minded and learn? And because I mean, I'm not a salesy type person, I kind of have an allergy to it. And so I think the other part is like, there's going to be some conceptions. I definitely carried them. I think that's the one thing I would tell myself is like, just give it a try, because some things I was slow to adapt just because I was like, that feels weird. And then it got there. And it is a mindset thing. Like, the mindset shift definitely happened. That first client I closed, I did not sell them on anything. I didn't try to sell. I didn't do any of that. I basically was like, I can help you if you want help, but I don't really care if you don't. Like, if you don't, that's fine. Life's good. We can all move on. And so that shift, when that happens, is really powerful, but that happens through reps.
Yeah, and I know there is a specific module on exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
Because yeah, given my sports psychology background, I love having that conversation any day of the week. But yeah, really, I mean, really appreciate you sharing all that. And maybe this might be my well, second to last question, I'll call it. Maybe out of selfishness for myself, I think it'd be useful for me to hear as much as anyone else. But what made it such a no-brainer decision for you in the first place? Because that was a lot of stuff to like think through. Like, am I willing to do the work? Am I going to put in the time? Do I actually want to make? Am I open-minded? So all those things. But like, you did it so quickly. You were, like you said, you just jumped in. Like, what made it a no-brainer for you?
Yeah. I'm not an indecisive human anyways. So if I think I want something, that's the way I'm gonna go. And then I would say it was compounded. One is, I definitely believed in kind of what you were doing and had a good conversation where there's a comfort level there that I think is important to establish. And then the other part, like I talked about, I've been through coaching programs and I've been through really shitty ones. And am I allowed to say shit? Sorry.
You're good. You're good.
I've been through really shitty ones and I've been through really good ones. And in those, the good ones have a little bit more structure. There's room to play in that structure, but there's good structure. So you have a roadmap basically of where you want to go, and you had that, and that solidified to me too, of like, this isn't just going to be we're going to passively talk and ponder ideas about life or things like that. It's going to be, here's the steps that we take. I'll support you to get there. And that's what accelerates growth. And so that made it a no-brainer once I saw there is a structure and here's a credible human that's running it.
Yeah, it's a let's make it happen a reality thing, not just like talk about it, not do anything.
Right.
So if anyone is thinking about, they're on the fence or they're thinking about booking a call, should be a link somewhere to book a call and we can have a conversation. But also, if you heard of any of what John is doing and you're interested in what he's doing, is there a place that people can check that out for you, John?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter or my website. So it's authenticallylead.com. And
Got it.
it's under construction right now, but hopefully it will be
It'll be
by
up.
the end of the week, it will be good, because I changed my offer. So now I had to change my website. Thanks, Riley.
Just giving you more work. That's my life goal, John. But hopefully work that you find enjoyable and fulfilling and that you were passionate about. So that's kind of the end game. What is your handle on or X, formerly known as Twitter?
Yeah, lead authentic.
Lead authentic. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share all that. And I'm sure we'll be talking more soon. But I'll see you on the
Yes.
other side then. Thanks, John.
Awesome. Thank you, Riley.